What's up, y'all? It's cousin Chet. Glad to see you back. If you missed me, give me more likes, subscribes, and shares. That helps. But we are back. It's been a little while, Dylan. Good to see you, Dilagin. And we are coming to you the day after Sunday, Easter Sunday. A beautiful spring weekend here for me. I loved it. I was telling your brother that this is these days, and they don't have a date. But there are the first days of true spring to me. And it's the first couple days without the rain, with that 65, 70-degree weather. The sun is out. The grass turns that vibrant, popping green. The buds start coming out on the trees. And it's just, after winter and like my hibernation syndrome, because I get kind of low energy through the winter, the lack of sunlight, the lack of vitamin D situations, stuff like that. And so these are like my favorite days. And with that said, Easter is one of those holidays that kind of brings in the spring, right? It's very much associated with spring. And so happy Easter, everyone. A day late, and this won't be loaded until probably tomorrow, so 4 or 5 days late. And if you haven't watched till next month, it'll be a month late. But I hope you had a great Easter. What'd you do
for Easter?
Yeah,
I went to church with my parents.
Right on.
Kind of. Usually I go to church mainly to for the Bible studies, for the sermons, because it's like I wanna hear the ideas that are circulating around. Something about it almost feels like blood work, if that makes sense. Because you're going to get a read on what are the ideas these everyday people are trading in, what are they dealing back and forth.
Yeah. What's the current ethos, the current zeitgeist, so to speak?
The world's fucking ending, and we should probably recognize the sanctity of Easter as the hearkening of Jesus' resurrection, and therefore the impending rapture and or end times
tribulations, the tribulations that must occur, so to speak. Wow, you just opened up a whole big can of worms right there, buddy.
Basically the same as anywhere else.
And it's so funny because I meant that as to affirm that that's what you were saying, but you took it as I was asking you the question, and you just gave me all that meat. That was awesome.
I was just tell you what it is.
No, I feel you. I do. I struggle to disagree. I think for me, I don't want to be in fear. I don't feel that it serves me right now to be in fear of that. And one thing that I recognize is that, at least in Christianity, they've been saying it for the last 2,000 years. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And so, it may look like a bad time, but so did the Great Depression, so did the wars. There's a lot of people struggling and suffering. And
I was going to say, that's one thing that's weird that's still, it's probably forever going to be weird, but there's something interesting and curious to me about going back to church and kind of revisiting my old, the framework of my childhood that I was pretty much raised up in. Because it's but it's also kind of frustrating at the same time, because you go back to church, and the interesting question is what part of this did not sink into everybody else that sunk into me eventually, which is this realization of the world has ended many times. It has ended for many people. World's ending right now
and
for
before
somebody.
people.
Yeah, the world's ending right now for someone somewhere.
Sure.
And it's like these memetics or these ideas.
Mm.
It's not even so much like what actually physically happened. What angle did the apple fall and bump the tree when what angle did the apple fall when it hit Eve in the head, and how did that influence her decision making? Like if you're peddling in these ideas like that, eventually it's going to start to sound like nonsense.
I think it's I had this phrase almost that I said to someone, but it really is, it's paying attention to the distractions instead of listening to the message. If you're going to spend all your time parsing words,
Mm.
um, I guess for some people they need to do that. That's their brain, and I want to respect that, right? I want to respect that. For some people, I am very metaphorical, and so when I see a word and when I read words in a book, I'm feeling it more than I'm intellectualizing it.
The idea that this could happen, that there would be a
Yeah, to me
tribulation.
it's, and well, not just that, it's if we're going to talk about scripture and specifically the Bible, to mince words and all the rules and all that jazz, I'll say it time and time again. To me, that's who Jesus was. Those are the only people that Jesus was like negatively judging, man.
Well, and that's super literal. Well, there's
That,
seven
yeah.
trumpets, so we got to find the seven trumpets and
Right,
figure out
right. And
where
to
we're
think that,
at.
and there are certain books that I understand that they're history, right? And they are kind of supposed to be telling a chronological or a historical story. But there's plenty of it that there's no way I can take literal. There's no way I can take Genesis literal. The idea that there is somebody, or and I understand. Okay, the idea is that God told who, Moses,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, that this is how life started. Is it possible for God to tell Moses such? Sure. I'm not going to say.
Well,
I'm not going to limit God to anything, but I take it as an allegory. I take it metaphorical. I take it as this is a campfire story that was told for generations and generations by the shamans of tribes that coalesced into the tribes of Israel. And this is what came out when they decided to write it down. This is the version, right? We know that there are other versions because we hear about Lilith.
mm-hmm.
And so anyway, my whole point is like I don't need to take it literal. And why do I even want to worry about whether or not Mary was a virgin? I don't care. I'm listening to Jesus. He is the teacher. Everything else is moot to me. I don't care. What's the message?
Well,
what is he trying to say to us? What if he is the divine and he is using words to communicate with us because that's all we have, then what is he saying to us, and how has that made it through time? How has it changed because of cultures and other things? And so what is the zeitgeist, or what is the, I'm not going to use that word correctly in this way, but what is he trying to teach me, about this life? And
how esoteric can I get for this one?
do your thing, bro.
Because
get down, boogie.
I've been wondering a lot of. I've been in that same headspace for a long time. One of the things I've been doing this year, maybe the only genuinely productive thing I've been doing for like the last 5 or 6 months, I've been doing a lot of source checking.
Source checking.
As in, like, I hear all these ideas. I like ideas. I like academia. I like to know what it is.
What it is, homie. Go ahead.
Well,
it is what it is.
Well, I've been following. I decided this year, like, I'm going to follow up on fact checking or source checking all these authors and all these speakers. They're dropping names. The professional ones, the professional speakers and podcasters and authors. The professional ones always cite their sources because that's the mark of a professional. This is my idea. These are the ideas that, I gathered from someone else. I took them all, I put them back together. I took them apart, I put them back together, and now I feel as though I have a more reasonable hypothesis. Anyway, so I've been following a lot of the citations.
I don't agree with that definition of professional, but I don't want to get us on a tangent. So,
I mean, a professional
but I understand
writer.
what you're coming from.
Yeah, a professional
podcaster. When I start getting paid, I will be called a professional podcaster. I will call myself that because to me, that's what makes me professional is getting paid to do it. And I'm not going to give you sources, so maybe that's my reason. Anyway, I really don't want to get on that tangent. Just want to make it clear. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for the support.
Professional, genuine academics do this.
Yes, academics. Yes.
Yeah. And I've been following a lot of the citations and reading the authors I read. Trying to get a timeline of okay, what's the origin point of all these ideas? One thing that I've come across is this notion that eschatologies, so end times stories, the Hindus have one, the Christians have one, Islam has one, most major, even the fucking Nordic Vikings had an eschatological worldview. So whether it's Ragnarok or Kali Yuga or the end times, there's this idea it's a pretty old idea that most religious eschatologies are based on past traumas. Like they're based on real events that have already occurred. So somewhere around 12,000 years ago, there's pretty clear-cut evidence that there's a major asteroid impact with the Earth, and that this might have actually tripped the Ice Age as we study it and know it today.
Well, there are multiple ice ages.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Interruption from Good Citizen. They're planning on bringing woolly mammoths back.
Yeah.
Woolly mammoth. That will be scary and cool at the same time.
Yeah, they're gonna actually Jurassic Park woolly mammoths back on.
What happens when they bring dinosaurs back? And it's really Jurassic Park it.
There's a new David Attenborough show called Prehistoric
Planet. The
Planet.
potential of this planet moving forward in the history is crazy. But with that being said, we're going to talk about the eschatological ideas that people have had.
And I mentioned that.
And they usually don't include dinosaurs. Unless they're mouth-breathing dinosaurs. Oh, I mean dragons.
I'll come back to the eschatological view in a second.
Okay.
Because it ties into what I'm about to say about circumcision.
Let's go. I mean, no. Please leave my dick skin alone.
But I've been talking. This has been in my head for the last few days in particular. It's a very odd thing that nobody questions. Almost nobody questions this out loud, but circumcising a baby has to be painful. And especially if you're a more conservative right-wing person, like there's this weird cognitive dissonance I find where it's like a conservative person, like as far as I understand a conservative to be, most of the time if I bring that up I think it's kind of fucked up we carve up boys' dicks the second they're born. Like I think it's genuinely unethical. Well, if it's a more conservative person, what I usually hear is something like, yeah, well, it's got to be easy. It's got to be healthier. I mean, it gives you less skin you have to clean up. There's all these medical things. We've been doing it for a long time, and seem to be getting along just fine. So who's worried about it? And if I talk to a more quote unquote liberal person, I usually get the response of, well, isn't it just look better?
That's such a lame reason.
Isn't it just more aesthetically appealing?
To butcher a child.
I'm not even bullshitting. Like this is what I hear from people.
Well, and I think there's some, like, I do want to go back to, we've talked about traditions before, and traditions come from culture, and then it becomes in some senses it becomes sacred, especially when you have such a family history, right? If we think about the Jews, like, this is a family history. This goes all over. This is the family of Abraham, right? These are the tribes of, right? And so that sacredness of that connection to the family and to the traditions and to the culture, it has its value. I mean, it's one reason why the Jewish people have stayed so tight knit through all the trials and tribulations that life has brought to them as a people.
So what's the value of circumcising?
Well, it's kind of like pork, right? Maybe we don't know why it makes us sick. We just know it does. And so we just don't eat pork.
Yeah.
Right? They're very common in the Middle East. Well, I mean, think about it. You kill something, if you don't have any way to freaking store it, it's going to go bad in a couple of days. And I think most people know that, like, you don't eat raw pork. So if it's uncooked, it spoils quickly. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you know what? Just stay away from it because it just makes people sick. And with the circumcision thing, also living in a deserty, sandy area, I tell you what, I don't know what hurts worse, which is getting it lopped off one time or dealing with a really bad yeast infection multiple times as a kid. Because you get a little bit of sand in that, you don't clean it good, you get a yeast infection, pulling that skin back fucking hurts, and peeing through it hurts too. Like, it is a painful thing because it, like, the yeast infection just dries it out and it just makes it hard for it to expand over the, you know what I mean? And so, you're talking about a time when hygiene, one of the reasons why we have longer lives now is because of the hygiene, water, like the access to clean water that we have now. And so if you don't have that and you've got little boys running around with uncircumcised penises and yeast infections, some of them going to end up closed, bro. Like, I don't know. And then you got to cut it open. So why not just take it off? And then, over time, Abraham's like, you know what? This is how we're going to show. Because, I mean, I want to give respect to that too. This is a sacred symbol of connection to God and to, that pound of flesh, so to speak.
A relationship between your imagination and the reality.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair, but at the same time, for those people, their imagination was their reality, their collective imagination, and as we've grown and we grow as individuals, but we also grow as a community, and we grow as a society, and we come up with these rules. And what are the rules, and who gets to make them?
Well, let me ask you this: why are women circumcised across the world?
Well, first of all, are they really circumcised across the world, or some pretty
Well,
specific?
what's the not across the whole world, but you know what I
Like,
mean.
there's some pretty specific. Like, I can only think of one real continent that circumcises women.
But
And
what's
so
the
that's
purpose of it?
I don't know. First, my real answer is I don't know, but to pontificate, um, I think the overall idea is that they don't. If from my understanding, circumcise a girl means you cut off her clitoris.
Yep.
And so that means that you're taking away a lot of the sexual pleasure. I mean, I think the clitoris is a girl's happy button. I'm a virgin, so I don't know these things. Um, but I think I've heard that it's like a happy button, and so the idea that they cut them off so girls can't be happy, I guess I don't know. Maybe so they don't enjoy sex.
How many nerve endings do you think are in that foreskin?
All of them. I don't
A
know.
lot.
In the foreskin itself,
Hmm.
nah. In the dickhead, in the penis head, a lot.
I mean, how many nerves you got in your thumb?
I don't know. I've never counted.
Think there's much more skin on your thumb than your foreskin?
I just the foreskin is like this. It's like this excess. It doesn't have a lot of feeling. What the thing that it does is my dick doesn't rub against my underwear all day and desensitize my dick. So
Yeah.
therefore, when I feel something with my dickhead, like I feel it, because it's not desensitized, right? It's not been rubbing up on
See, I was
jeans and underwear and boxer shorts, and
I have a hypothesis.
I'm listening to hypothesis. How do we get on?
I'll explain. And it has
How
something.
esoteric can you be if you're talking about penises?
Well, the reason why I've been thinking about this is for the same reasons we were talking about eschatology, or why I brought it up.
Okay, now I really want to know the connection between circumcision and eschatology. Go ahead.
Well, let me float a meme, an idea here.
I like how you use the original word meaning of meme. Go ahead.
It's going to make a comeback. Well, case in point. The difference between this right here and this, I inhale them both. I inhale them, they both cross my blood-brain barrier, and they both have an effect on my mood, my outlook.
Oh.
They both have an effect on my mood, my outlook, my capacity to think. They both have an effect.
Mm-hmm.
But men are notorious. Men are stereotyped and categorized based on our sex drive. Largely speaking, broadly speaking.
Say that again, though, just so I can hear it.
Men are partially categorized by our prolific sex drives.
Okay.
That's kind of one of the things.
As in our status, right? There's a status. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I think there's more of a physiological. There's a physiological incentive for pursuing sex as the ultimate aim.
Most definitely. We are definitely created as sexual things.
Now, here's my thing. I wonder to myself, because I could drop a bunch of references and names for this, but essentially I've been thinking about this idea that I came across, that an orgasm is supposed to be it can be almost indicative of your psychological health. Because if you can't have a proper orgasm, if you can't, I mean, you can get off, you can produce sperm, and you can shoot the sperm into an egg. But that doesn't necessarily mean, like, you had a huge physical release. There's plenty of people who, like, if you've ever come across, like, a dude who just is just not interested in sex.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, I've met asexual people.
Like, they've just kind of gotten past it.
Oh, you talking about like as they get older?
Either or.
Sure.
But I'm saying,
well, I mean, I think some guys just accept that they're not getting none.
yeah, I think
You
that's
know what I mean?
probably the majority of
They're just like-
asexual people.
I mean, for guys, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
But it's like it
married or not, some of them are married and they're getting none.
if you look at it from an evolutionary sense, though, like there's nothing advantageous to just losing your sex drive, to forfeiting it.
No, but if you think about it like this, those aren't the men that we want reproducing. They're not strong enough. They're not whatever, right? So it's the more viral ones, the ones that the women are choosing, because they're not choosing him. They're not, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm just, but, okay, so bringing
Anyways,
back
point
to,
is,
I'm interested.
the point I'm making is, I wonder whether or not the circumcision stalls or halts the physiological release of men's sex drives, so that it becomes less of a unique singular activity with a time and a place, and kind of from something that you can kind of balance of, okay, well, when I get this release, it's going to be such a profound physical release of tension that I can pace out my sexual encounters a little bit more. As opposed to this right here, just nicotine.
And he's comparing marijuana to nicotine vapes.
Yeah. As opposed to nicotine, which this does not give me any profound, like, it doesn't give me that much of a profound
There's
change.
no like euphoric, there's no high really for you.
It's more just avoiding a state of withdrawal. That's kind of what that's
so true about cigarettes.
That's kind of what the nicotine is like.
Yeah.
Well, part of me wonders if men become sex addicts for much the same reason people become nicotine addicts.
Well,
it's not a profound pleasure. It's not a huge change, but it's just enough of a change to keep you going a little bit longer.
I don't know. I've had some pretty fucking awesome orgasms, so apparently I don't live in that camp. I've also want to say that, okay.
Anyways.
To me, I actually said it a moment ago, in the sense that an uncircumcised penis isn't rubbing against underwear. It's not rubbing against stuff all day. It's not feeling the air.
Or for your entire life.
Right. So, and so that desensitization. So therefore, a person with foreskin that covers that means that those nerves, that those sensations are heightened. So, number one, I would say yes. Now, was there somebody that was sitting up in some wise little big hut and around the campfire, and they were like, you know what, men are way too promiscuous. We need to slow them down. Let's cut off their fucking dick skin.
I'm saying the opposite, though. I think it creates a state of wantonness.
I'll tell you in a minute. But anyway. So,
I think I'm wondering the reason why I'm wondering to myself, does circumcision, does it suit this aim of generating dissatisfaction?
Say that last part one more time. Does it
instill dissatisfaction?
Because, well, I guess my question for you is: are you asking, was it intentionally to do so, or was it just a function of?
That's why I brought up the eschatological view, that all of these end time narratives are basically repackaged versions of horrific events that have happened in the past. It's like the great red dragon that descends, out of the heavens and wreaks havoc on the earth. A lot of dragon imagery is.
So, what is this thing in the past that you're talking about in the future that's related? This experience. I'm still looking for the connection to
The
something.
connection, I think, is when you read the Bible. When I read the Bible, I think there's evolution, the study of evolution, which is sort of the tradition of, okay, well, what physically happened in the past? Like, what's the material reality? This rock fell here, it knocked this precipice off, that splashed in the ocean, that caused a tsunami, and that's what happened to this little island in the Mediterranean that we excavated.
Mm-hmm.
That's more or less the domain of evolutionary theory. I think the Bible is very much a piece of evolutionary history, except it's our account of what it was like to evolve.
It's an account.
Yeah, it's an account.
One family's account, right? It's a family history.
In a comparative mythology fashion.
Sure.
Like, mythology and religion is our experience of evolution as we were perceiving it along the way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And with that being said, when I started looking at the Bible that way, and I start coming across these ideas like circumcision or old world tragedies being recycled in order to generate social religious cohesion, there's a third idea that pops up between those two, which is this idea that not only are these myths and these religions our personal story of evolution, there's all these little hints sprinkled throughout that seem to indicate the evolution is being guided. It's being willfully directed in some way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's the Christian kind of purview, or and potentially Jewish, but yeah.
Well, even in a Hindu Buddhist fashion, like I think it still applies nonetheless.
They don't have a deity that is directed.
Well, it doesn't even have to be a deity. It's Moses' idea.
Is whose?
Moses's.
Well, but I mean, I'm speaking for like the Hindu Buddhist kind of like. But anyway, I don't know enough to really speak on that.
Well, point is, somebody had an idea. Yep, somebody had an idea. They had an idea of, hey, we have all of these insane events. Like, imagine just an asteroid falling out of the sky right now and landing on New Carlisle.
That would hurt.
Can you imagine the horror? There's a giant celestial rock.
Yeah, bro, I can't imagine. I see it on the news in Ukraine. I see it on the news in Iraq. I see it in the news in Afghanistan. I see it on the news in other places. I can't imagine it. I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's not the same as an asteroid, right? Falling on but to think about the bombs and shit, Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Yes, I definitely can't imagine it. And I can imagine it in a real sense that there are people that are alive that have lived it.
But I mean, imagine you lived on a farm.
Yeah.
Like imagine your little Conan, your barbarian self, like.
Yeah, you're just chilling.
Yeah, you're just chilling.
Yeah.
And then, it's like one day, the world ends.
Yeah, or Genghis Khan shows up.
Yeah, I'm saying the profound trauma of that, especially if you're in a pseudo paradisical state,
sure,
where it's just you and the family and the town. It's just you guys. Everybody's got their farm. Everybody's got their land and their hut and their family, and everybody's just chilling. The profound trauma of, and then the world ended.
Or at least it did for you. And again, I think about when the Europeans came here and they didn't even realize they killed like 90% of the native population here.
But
We have no idea about and what would that be like, that one day everything's fine and then these strangers come from a different land and then we go through about 10 years of just everybody dying.
But I think that idea is powerful enough to shape nations. That degree of trauma.
Well, but see, I guess one thing that I'm considering is I don't think that a lot of people have lived like that, bro. I think that people throughout history are very aware that Genghis Khan or his brother could show up at any moment. And you could, that's one reason why we created civilizations, was there's this innate understanding that we have to protect ourselves, and you don't know who's going to show up. You don't know if it's going to be a bear. You don't know if it's going to be robbers. You don't know if it's going to be people that just want to steal your crap.
Point is, you should live your life as if Satan's always watching.
Well, I don't know that I think that it's just a function of living on the planet, and a function of our evolution is the idea. Like, if I understand the idea of a couple humanoids ago, they were living in trees. They still had like thumb toes. You know what I mean? Like they could still like grab a tree with the foot, like they had four hands basically, right? And then yeah, they stood up and took a couple steps, but their hips weren't made for walking. But why are they sleeping in trees? Because it's dangerous as crap to sleep on the ground. There's lions and tigers and bears.
Mm-hmm.
See, this would be a really cool time if you had that board and it was like, oh my. But anyway, and so my point is like, this goes back to, why do we focus on the negative? We focus on the negative because if everything's good and everything looks like it's supposed to look, we're comfortable. But as soon as we see that tree moving a little bit awkward, or this thing, or this weird shadow, we're on the alert, right? Because this is a threat to life. And so my point is while there have been, I'm sure, some tribes and some people throughout time who have had that bliss that you're describing, right? The idea that you could live without fear of being attacked, right? As you said, your blissful paradisical, everything. I don't think many people on this planet have truly had that. I mean, they have had days and had moments. You might have a beautiful day like it is today, but then tomorrow a tornado comes through. I mean,
I'm not making a point about paradise or living in total bliss. I'm trying to make a point about evolution. How we go, how something goes from living in the tree with four hands
to what I think that underlying fear is part of that evolution.
Yeah, exactly.
The very few people are blessed to have those moments of peace, true peace. And I think sometimes people in the United States, we have had it. Like overall, I'm not really worried about somebody showing up at my door and killing me. Overall, I'm not really worried about a bomb dropping on me. I'm not worried about a gang or a cartel showing up and saying, I want all your shit. Overall, I've had that in my lifetime. And I don't think that everybody's had that. I don't think the majority of people that have lived on this planet have had that.
And I think it sits unconsciously in everyone's mind. This can happen.
Yeah, because it can.
And if you don't have to deal with that, if you don't have to build a worldview that includes it, and you don't have to come to terms with the fact that, yes, this is our heritage. We have horrific traumas that just kind of build in, they just build themselves into the human genome.
Yeah. Well, so the idea that it could all end tomorrow, or that it could all end in an instant,
Mm.
I think is a reality that most humans have experienced. And
Yeah.
and so one thing that I think you're saying is that we've taken that, and then as a global society, this is a theme that kind of goes through a lot of cultures, whether we're talking about just the simple cycles of life and death, or we're talking about, there's a beginning and an end, right? Because to me, those are two distinctly different things. The Christian is chronological. There's a beginning, there's an end, and we're part of that end, right? We're part of like the massive goal of God before He's done doing what He does, right? Because then there's the end, right?
The most profound things that ever have, are, and will ever happen all fit in a neat little framework.
Yeah, but whereas on a more Eastern cyclical is there's just cycles. There's cycles. There's cycles of life and death. That's just how it works, right? And so there is no end. There is no beginning. It's an eternal cycle that just goes around. So to to get back to, okay, then what is our fear, right? If we're going to think of what is the worst thing that could happen, well, the worst thing that could happen is that it all ends. Is it really? Because I'd much rather, if I'm going to die, just take a bullet. I'd rather not even see it coming. Just one moment the lights are on, the next moment they're not, and I don't even realize what's happening. I'm at the gates talking about, anybody home? You know what I mean? I'm a little early. But so because I do think that, to go back to this end time thing and to say that the sum of all of our fears, right, is what we kind of put into, well, if this happens, what will it be like? To me, a much worse fate than instant death is not dying and being in a state of perpetual suffering.
Well, doesn't it make all the end times talk make a lot more sense?
In what regard? In what regard?
In the sense that it speaks to people. Whether you're thinking about these words of trauma and prehistory and evolution, whether or not any of that's even in your vernacular, you go to church and you hear the preacher say, "World's ending. We know this story. You know this story. Just look deep in your heart and you can see the writing on the wall."
Yeah, and so, okay, you bring up a meme, right?
Mm-hmm.
You bring up the original meaning of the meme, which is what?
Which is an idea that propagates itself sort of like a gene or a virus does.
Okay, and so we have memes on the internet, right? That people they represent an idea.
Yeah,
right.
You can use
this
context
meme,
clues to
context
discern.
clues. There's a picture. There's whatever. Think about this. We now live in a time that the memes, we can get 10, 15 memes, and they're in a rotation, and it's a meme this week, and next week it's, who even cares?
Mm-hmm.
In a way, the Bible is like the original meme that you could see. And we didn't have 10 other ones to follow it to replace it, because we're now on this consumption diet of ideas, right? And we've got so much coming in that 2 weeks from now, I'm not even going to remember what was popular. I'm not even, you know what I mean? Like, it's just happening so fast.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we didn't, because this is pre-books, you don't have the, you don't have, I've lost my train of thought, but you don't have that replacement.
Yeah.
So it just stays, right? And my daddy did it, and my grandma did it, and her pappy did it, and his great grandma did it. You know what I mean? At those times, that those memes,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever culture, whether it's Confucius, Taoism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, I don't care. The memes stayed.
Mm-hmm.
And they became strong. They became entrenched. So
kind of like circumcision.
but yes, but and so does the idea that it could all end. And what do memes do? Oftentimes, why do memes get liked and shared? What do you think is the main mover of something going viral and getting liked and shared as a meme?
It's a mass. It's a massively consumable. It's a massively consumable inside joke.
So you can relate to it.
Yeah.
You relate to it. I relate to it. We all relate to
You
it.
recognize there's a hidden message behind. It's not just the text on the screen.
Sure.
It's not just the picture. It's these two things put together is an inside joke, and you're in on the joke.
And that's true for the current memes. Like that's oftentimes what we have in the pictures because it is like symbols, right? That we all understand we understand what the picture means. We understand what the words mean.
It's
we
a
understand the
colloquial
context,
version
right?
of a meme.
Now, but the other thing that really gets it is it creates an emotional response. Whether that emotional response is one of nostalgia, suade, as they might say in Brazil, um, or it generates sorrow, a feeling of love, and the biggest one is fear. Like there's no doubt that the ones that get the most clickbait are those ones that are gonna get you in that fear, because fear's a motivator, right?
Yeah. You can go on Twitter and find there are a dime a dozen all the videos of in school fights.
And how do you control people the best? You kind of keep them in fear. But see, the truth about the fear is that we are in fear ourselves. That's why we're easily controlled, and that's why we're like, I'm ready to give up some liberty so I can feel more safe. I'm willing to risk taking this experimental drug so I can feel more safe. You know what I mean?
Does that make more sense than why I have such a hard line position on? No, you should not instantly physically mutilate a baby boy the second he's born into the world. Within the hour that he's born into the world, one of the first things he encounters isn't just mom, isn't just
well, that's our culture.
food.
That's not like the Jews wait a couple days. I think people in Africa they wait a few days. So I think that's just our medical atheistic kind of scientific approach. Is like, well, they're here. Let's get it done today.
But regardless of whether you get it done at 13 or
let me say that the trauma of coming into this world, of leaving that nice warm bubble bath you know, where everything's muted, you know, everything just sounds like everything's just a hum. It's just everything's a vibration, you know what I mean? And especially in today's world, you come out and you're in this bright ass fucking hospital. You got all these hospital lights, everything's white and reflective and bright. All the noise all of a sudden. Could you imagine just the that experience is like, it's got to freak you out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the way I think about death is like, you know, all of a sudden everything's dark, you just close, everything's chill, and then all of a sudden it's like, and all your senses light up. You feel the cold air, you hear the loud sounds. Doctor spanks your mom's ass, and you're like, "Where's Dad?" You know what I mean? Like, but but you know, it's just like, yeah. So yeah, to add on to that, also, we're gonna stick you with a couple needles immediately too, and we're gonna cut off a little bit of your penis. Yeah, I think that'd be true. I think that it definitely doesn't make it better.
And again, in my mind, this is just a personal hypothesis of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But I connect that dot with the dot of end times revelations and eschatology
Because
they both lend themselves to this idea of there's something deliberate about the way the trauma is recycled, repackaged, and reapplied on the societal level. in a way that shapes social norms and values and morals and ethics. It's been repackaged since the beginning of time in order to steer the ship.
Well, is it order? I'm not disagreeing with you. I definitely think that there are people that use fear to steer the ship. I feel that a lot of Roman and by extension European culture has used fear to steer the ship. I feel that a lot of Christianity, especially in the early days, used fear to steer the ship, right? They're not alone. A lot of people use fear of what is going to happen if I don't do it, right? Whether it's like some karma thing, right? Whether it's some kind of like Hindu idea of reincarnation that like if you're a really bad person, you're going to be born as a lesser life form, or whether you're going to be experience eternity in hell, right? Um, and so I just fear is such a motivating life force for any creature. I mean, I don't care if you're human. You know what I mean? Like, even if you're a tiger in the jungle, right? You think he's not scared? You know what I mean? Think he's not worried when he gets that kill? He's like, man, I gotta go hide this. Somebody's gonna come take my food. And he sees the other male tiger. He's like, wait a minute. You don't belong here. We gotta fight to the death. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that kind of fear feels like. I don't know what that feels like for him. I don't know what his chemical makeup is and his emotional state. I don't know how that works for animals like that, but I know how it works for us. And I know there are a lot of people that will sell their souls just for a sense of security. You know, like, and I'm not necessarily going to judge that person, you know, because there's a lot of different methods to survive. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, is to survive. So to bring this back to, I'm still, so yes, I agree with the trauma at the birth, and I agree that you're adding trauma if you're cutting off parts of the penis in that painful event. It's like, hey, welcome to the world.
And
oh, by the way, you're supposed to understand that that's somehow because God wanted you to. God wanted that little bit of.
I guess I'm being a
eraser.
I guess I'm endeavoring to be a good scholar when I say that's my personal little brainlet is this thing kind of works the same way this thing works. Maybe there's a connection.
Okay, so how do they? So maybe I'm missing something.
But no, I've made the whole point. But it's just like that's an idea. That's, for lack of a better word, a meme that's been sitting in my head for a while. Is it being directed? And if it's being directed, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be God. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be.
You know, some people, I think at that time, they just said, you know, I had this thought and it must have come from God, and that's how I'm going to give it validity, right? That's how I'm going to give it some credence.
Or that's what I'm going to tell everyone else.
Right. Because, like, you know, they just think I went up and did some mushrooms up on the mountain and saw a burning bush and came down with these brilliant ideas. They not going to believe me, but if I were like, God said, you know, how are you going to question God? And most people won't. How many of you question God? I'd say a fair percentage of my 20 regular viewers, and thank you very much for being one of my 20 regular viewers. I don't even know who you are, literally. I have some people are like, hey, I've looked and seen your podcast, and I appreciate you. And I know that I've got 20 regulars, and I'm like, somebody loves me. I mean, golly.
20 Luciferian Reggies.
Whoa. What's a what? So, you know, but so this is funny because we're talking about end times, but we've got this beautiful spring window open behind us intentionally. Sorry for the light flood, but I wanted that tree. I wanted that beautiful sunlight behind us. And Easter is such a representation, a symbol, a tradition of kind of like hello spring, and just to take like the religion out of it for a moment, like you know what I mean, like it's just there's certain celebrations that we have for spring, for the winter equinox, and for the for fall and the harvest time. You know what I mean? There are these natural kind of built-in traditions that we have that are really because of the weather, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're celebrating some and celebrating some of those shifts.
Same reason why you have astrologers staring at the stars all night long. It's because we need to know where we're at and when we're at.
Well, and so with Easter, there's for Christianity, Easter is a representation of that rebirth, right? It is because spring is the return of life. You know what I mean? You get the mating season and babies being born in nature anyway, right?
The trauma has passed.
The hard struggle of winter. We survived, hibernated, whatever we had to do. And so, but for me, when I think about the end times, I think of that at the end of the day, it's the end of a time. It's not the end of all time. It's the end of this time. And my understanding is that the next time is supposed to be a lot better because we've grown. I don't know if we want to call it enlightenment. I don't know if it's the wheat has been separated from the
chaff.
Exactly. And so now we have these now we have humanity that runs like basically everybody's a Jesus. Right? Everybody's like that kind of mentality, that kind of vibe, right? Like, you know what I mean? And so now the whole situation's run a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I imagine after all the blah, 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 right? Because what's the whole purpose of it? It's the judgment day, right? But not everybody leaves. You mentioned the rapture earlier. The rapture's just taking what? A couple hundred people? Who's the rapture take?
More or less, yeah. It's
like 133,000 people.
144,000.
144, sorry, excuse me. I was a little bit off by 11,000. But, yeah. So
you forgot to
out of the 8 trillion people,
to carry the angels at the
bottom. Forgot to carry the angel. But we're talking. We got like 8 billion people on the planet. Who's going to miss 144,000? Okay, I'm not that no one would miss you if you just suddenly disappeared, but would it make the news?
Could it be covered up?
It definitely could be covered up. But who's going to make the connection if 20,000 people vanish in the middle of China, and then another 20,000 vanish in the middle of India. And let's talk about maybe they're poor people.
The Uyghurs just all disappeared.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
It must have been right.
So anyway, my bad. I digress. I want to get back to that. For me, it's kind of like Easter.
You see it more in terms of that Eastern cycle.
I am very cyclical. Yes, because I think that's how God is. I don't think God is square. I don't think he's got real defined edges. As much as people wish that he did and wish that it was easy to like put him in a box, I think that any limit you put on God is therefore limiting God, and you can't limit God, so therefore that cannot be God. And so, I do the same by putting him in a circle. But yes, I think that the universe works in circles. I think that cycles are a real thing, and but that's my understanding when I think about the book, right? He's like, prepare for the end times. Like, for what? For another life, or so that you get to go to heaven so that you're the wheat, not the chaff?
I think there's something healthy in the reminder of there are going to be moments of pure chaos. There's no clear path forward. Nobody's got any real answers. Everybody's going off of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
There's no order. there's no structure.
Right.
There's no Shangri-La. I think there is something healthy in reminding the general populace, hey, this is real too.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are some people that do have their head in the sands and they really do think everything's okay. And you know, there are some people that really they want to be lied to. My thing is, and here's the kind of point I was trying to make, is Easter is this time of rebirth, right? It's the resurrection. So if that's what Jesus does, then when he comes back, quote unquote, to use these kind of Christian terminologies, he's bringing back a resurrection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of all of us, right? Isn't that what the story says? So that means to me that there, after the end of the day, after all the trials and tribulations, there is something after that.
Mm.
And what is that?
I mean, for starters,
I mean, are we dead? Are we in heaven? Are we dead? Or is all humanity just wiped out? Or are there people left on the planet or in a space station or on Mars or on the moon? I don't know. But my understanding is there are people here. People do survive. In the Christian story, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Or is it just like, you know, a big nuclear war and boom, the Earth, the planet just explodes?
No,
like
the conclusive idea is, the conclusion to the book is, there's a major period of chaos and tribulation, and
right?
only exclusively evil people end up calling the shots, and that's the moment where the entire world is on the brink of becoming unredeemable. That's when Jesus shows up with the heavenly host, remakes the world anew, and it's paradise from there on out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. The paradise, the happily ever after part.
Yeah, it really is.
Right? Like, that's the thing that everybody misses when they're like, oh my God, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Well, okay. It's been falling for 2,000 fucking years. Can we fucking stop it from falling? I'm ready for it to be over with. Yeah. It'd be really nice to get to the other side of this whole shenanigans.
Dude, I'm just chilling until Jesus shows up.
Trademarked right now, this date, right now. I'm just chilling until Jesus shows up. I want it on a t-shirt. Oh my God. I'm just chilling. Yeah. I'm just chilling with Buddy Jesus doing like this. I'm just chilling until Jesus shows up. And I am. And you know what? If he doesn't show up by the time I die, then cool. I'll watch him from up there.
Those aren't the words he uses, but that's pretty much the vibe I pick up from Alan Watts.
I love Alan
every
Watts.
time I listen to Alan.
I highly recommend Alan Watts. If you are a philosophical thinker, if you want somebody to put some words together with a melodic tone that just, I mean, yeah.
Till the real deal shows up.
Alan puts thoughts together in a good way that are thought-provoking and makes sense. And he does a really good job of kind of merging Western and Eastern thoughts.
He's a lot like Jordan Peterson for me in the sense that he has the tone and he has the tone of somebody who's walked as much as he's talked.
To me, I would not equate the two, but I hear you. Jordan Peterson to me is he's that little kid that was just always small and always skinny, but he wants to be heard so bad. I love you, Jordan. Honestly, I do. And I have a similar issue that sometimes I just want to be, and I love to talk. I love to talk. But no, Jordan's voice irritates me sometimes because he sounds like he's whining.
Sounds like Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, but I do. Jordan Peterson has helped me tremendously. He has put, there are some people that just have a way of saying things. And it's that phrase. It's just like what you just did. When you're like, I'm just chilling till Jesus gets here, right? It's just some way that you put things and it just clicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jordan Peterson, Alan Watts did that a lot.
That was like all Alan Watts had to say was just profundities.
He would just, you're like, oh my God, aha moment. Like one after another.
Peterson does more of the thinking out loud.
Peterson, well, but he's very smart. So I when he thinks out loud, it's more than just babble, right?
Yeah.
It's these are well-founded thoughts. It doesn't mean that he's always right, but they're just founded on a lifetime of study and watching and observing. And
I think it has to do with reframing problems so that they seem solvable.
Yeah.
I think it's shifting the kaleidoscope until things start to kind of line up.
Jordan does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Watts. Just Watts doesn't need an introduction Watts doesn't need a question to answer. He just kind of shows up and spits it.
Well, he knows if you're there to see him, he knows you're already asking the question just by your mere presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Alan Watts. I was so thankful. Here's how I found Alan Watts. Back in the day, back in the 1900s, we had this thing called dial-up internet. And you had your Yahoo chat rooms. We had Yahoo chat rooms. And I remember there was a period of time where I essentially studied Buddhism in a Yahoo chat room. Now, in that chat room was this guy. I can't remember his name. It was like something 2001.
Username.
Yeah, it was like Mahakati or some shit. But anyway, so I'm brand new. I don't know, my butthole from a hole in the ground. And I walk into this chat room and I hear this audio and there's this guy talking. And I'm listening and I'm like, oh, I'm having these aha moments after another, it's like a slight philosophical orgasm, if you will. And I'm just like, oh my God, this guy's talking to me. You know what I mean? He's speaking what I'm thinking. He's speaking what I feel. He's speaking to my soul. He's, you know what I mean? He is taking these words and putting them together in these thoughts and feelings that I have not been able to put together before. And now he's just succinctly just like, like a puzzle piece. He's like, hey, you already got the border, but here's your little house and here's the barn. And, and so I messaged the guy because I think it's him. I think it's this Mahakati 2001 or whoever he is. And he doesn't respond to me, which hurts my feelings because I'm like Jordan Peterson. I just want to be heard. I just want to be acknowledged, want to be validated. I'm sorry. Maybe that's not Jordan Peterson. Maybe that's just cousin Chet. But anyway, and so what happens is I end up in the chat room and I'm like saying something about what I'm listening to, and somebody finally sends me a message like, that's Alan Watts, and he's been passed away already. These are just recordings, and you're a noob, and you're welcome.
Sincerely, Jesus.
No, it wasn't Jesus. It was some gay dude who was actually trying to hit on me. But thank you, gay dude, who was trying to hit on me, because I was living in an illusion. I thought this was a real person, and I was like, I want to wash their feet, like Alan Watts just spoke to me, bro.
Thanks, Gay Buddha Jesus 1984. You'll always be remembered.
Amen to that.
Roll
Pour
the,
some out.
roll the
Pour
prayer
some out for the
beads.
homies and everything. That was well said. Gay Buddha Jesus in 1984. Why'd you go back to 1984? The internet wasn't even around in 1984. He just
So
wanted
the
to
IP,
make.
so
He
the
just wanted to
IP
make
was
me old.
so the IP was public.
The IP was yes. Yeah. No, but and so yeah, but to go back to Easter in the end times, right? It for me. This is what I say. People get distracted. They pay attention to the distractions that are clearly distractions, and they miss the message. The message is that I take, and I want to be very clear. I personally believe that your message is your message. Your relationship with God is your relationship with God. My message and your message may not be the same, and that's completely fine. It's actually expected, in my opinion, and but for me, it really was about non-judgment, and it's weird because when we have this revelatory book at the end, there is a judgment, right? So there's kind of this paradox of judgment and non-judgment. However, I don't know the answer to that. I don't have anything actually with that behind. However,
Is there any wisdom to the idea that maybe there's people out there who come to only desire the Abu Ghraibs? Maybe there's people out there that only manufacture concentration camps for Uyghurs and trade organs on the black market.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that I would, if we're going to classify evil as a selfishness that is so selfish that it will take others' freedom and property in order to make their lives better. I don't know how we define evil in complete, where like what an actual definition, but to me, overall, that's what evil is. It's pretty easy to do. All you have to do is use and abuse somebody else for your own gains. And you can obviously, that goes all the way to rape and slavery to, just manipulating an old lady out of a couple extra bucks.
I think, to me, something like pure evil is the pursuit of is pursuing a state of decay or destruction almost as an orgasm, like almost as a physiological release.
Say that for me again.
I think of pure evil as almost it's the pursuit of the physiological release that comes with the destruction.
So I guess in a way, it's like you're getting pleasure off of giving this other person struggle.
It could be a person. It could be a tree you don't like in your yard. It could be that house. You can't stand that house. You can't stand the idea of somebody living there and.
But so it just comes down to you enjoy destruction, and therefore that's evil.
I think the pursuit of destruction as its own good.
The pursuit of destruction as its own good.
Because I pair that up with sex, because from the moment everybody hits about 12, 13 years old, there's this automatic function that switches on. There's some switchboard genes that just go once you hit puberty, and it's like suddenly you don't control necessarily what your desires are.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get the sensation of, man, I really can't control what's going on internally.
Mm-hmm.
But what that's priming you for is the pursuit of reproducing. It's the pursuit of Easter.
Mm.
This is a good in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's at the end of the day, that's our purpose, right? Our only purpose is to survive, to make another,
Be fruitful and multiply.
be fruitful and multiply. As good a citizen
And
just
if
said. Yep.
if that's the automatic good, if I'm gonna frame it as that's the automatic good, the automatic opposite of that is nah, it's just the destruction. That's the release. That's bliss. And I think
I definitely would agree that that is evil. I think, I mean, overall, without mincing words too much, I think that, yeah, like just this pure enjoyment of, you getting your rocks off on destroying something else or using something
And
or somebody.
I think that's the sleight of hand with all these eschatologies. The sleight of hand is the reality is that there are people in this world where if you sat in a room with that person and you understood them,
Mm-hmm.
it would be the psychological equivalent of sitting in the room with the devil. Those people are real. Those people exist. But the sleight of hand comes with, you and I both know which people those are. We know who the unredeemable are.
Well, but
The ones that
what?
butter that toast downside up.
I've never heard that before.
Those you never read Dr. Seuss.
Butter their toast
You
downside up.
never read the Dr. Seuss book where
No.
there's two countries that go to war because one country butters their bread on the bottom and the other one butters it on the top.
Oh my gosh, no, I missed this classic of Dr. Seuss. Shout out Dr. Seuss, by the way, one of the best ever.
But it's that's the sleight of hand is, yeah, there's a truism of these pure American psychos, like these Patrick Bateman psychopaths.
Yeah. And they are, and some of them, there are some psychopaths that are running really big businesses, and there are some psychopaths that are locked up, and there are some of them running around the streets for sure. And those are people that, in my mind, they get pure. Their motivation, their drive is just, how can I advantage myself off of this person? You know what I mean? Like maybe it's because they have no empathy, or they just don't care. Everything and everybody around them is there to be manipulated and used for their benefit. And when you get that to extremes where people that are willing to rape other people, or people that are willing to enslave other people, or just simply the people that are ready to extort other people, you know what I mean? Like, those classic kind of mafia behaviors, right? Like, I can kick your ass, and so therefore I get to bully you.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, it's not really that I can kick your ass. It's that we got a whole family, and you're just one person. So what are you going to do? Because we're going to beat you up every day until you acquiesce anyway.
But there's a gradient. Like there's a scale.
Yeah, man, because I can imagine, like, sitting, like, you ever watch, like, an interview in prison? Here's what I was thinking about earlier is there's like, like an interview in prison with that guy that just, like, has no respect for life at all. And that, like, in an instant, like, his heart is just so dark, you know what I mean? That, like, he almost is, like, fantasizing about strangling the interviewer as he's doing the interview, And then you got somebody like, I personally don't, this is going to be dangerous to say, but then you have somebody like Charlie Manson,
I was
right?
going to bring up Manson.
And in his interviews, and although he is off the wall and he's kooky and he talks in code, and yeah, he is aware that the interviewer may have that fear, and he may play on that fear.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't think Charlie Manson is really getting enjoyment out of. He doesn't get enjoyment out of killing. He gets enjoyment out of knowing that he's freaking you out.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like,
And I still don't think that he's pure evil.
yeah.
I think that he is a person that has been so wounded. He has been so beat up, and don't get me wrong, I recognize that it's dangerous to say because of what he's accused of. But I really do believe that if you look at his life history, that he was a good kid. He was a good soul when he came into this world. And I'm not sure that he's a bad soul now. I think he just sees from a farther place away than we do, and I don't know about the Sharon Tate murders. That's a whole other thing. Anyway,
In my mind, Manson. In my mind, Manson doesn't exist in an era without Alan Watts.
in my mind, Manson doesn't exist in a world without CIA psyops.
Yeah, granted. Like when I it was a few years back. I was watching all the Manson interviews, and something about it was like it was like Alan Watts kept coming to my mind. For one, because he kind of looks like a fucked up, disheveled, kind of homeless version of Alan Watts. He kind of talks like that, but it's like
Charlie Manson is nowhere near as coherent and but go ahead.
Not as, but I think I slightly disagree.
Okay.
Because I think what Manson always did was he spoke to those traumas and those fears, like you were saying, but it's like these are the tools he knows how to use.
Yeah.
It's like he knows how to cryptify everything he says so that he's planting ideas in your head, and it seems like they're your ideas.
Mm.
But I think that was the weird thing for me was when I started watching the Manson interviews. One of the first thoughts I had is, this guy seems evil. Like, this guy seems shady and corrupt and self-oriented. But he doesn't sound as crazy as I was expecting him to sound. In fact, he doesn't really sound that crazy to me at all.
No more crazier than Kanye West.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of like, some people's just way of expressing the thoughts and feelings that they're having, and the way that it comes out is, because of the intelligence, but maybe a lack of formal education. And so, you know what I mean? They're using different ways of communicating. You have a 10-syllable word to communicate this, so they're going to do it in a small poem. They're going to do it in a small rhyme. They're going to create a metaphor so that you can kind of understand what they're trying to say. You know what I mean?
They're going to trick your right brain.
And don't get me wrong, both of them had the situation of making me go, huh? What the? But then they both also have me go, oh my God, that was the cleverest. Like, because I love words and I love poetry for that. Like, that's one of my things is I really enjoy I enjoy wordplay. I enjoy, people that are able to take thoughts and put them in a word meme, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like memorable ways of saying it, or those ways that click, or like a creative, unique way of expressing an idea. So right now we're going to take a small commercial break. This commercial break is brought to you by legalization of marijuana. Is something that I really want to promote. I think that no person should ever have to go to jail or worry about being any kind of criminal for smoking the Lord's lettuce. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be the devil's lettuce. What is it? I saw a post today. It said, the Lord, it's not the devil's lettuce. It's the Lord's loud. Um, so anyhow, but and there are a lot of positive movements. More and more states are going medical. I think Kentucky and New Jersey recently made some changes. So states, the laws are changing. Ohio, get your together, get it together. We need to have just there's no need for any. It shouldn't be a ticket. Shouldn't be anything. And with that said, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for the support. Thank you for being consistent and checking my shows out. I'm going to say thank you to Dylan, who's had to step out. Just, Darian, Stephanie, all the people that have done interviews with me so far. Thank you very much. And with that being said, see you next time.
Buddy Jesus.
Oh, what is it? Gay Buddha Jesus, 1984.